like the way this is starting.
Get to it.
All right. Mr. Chair.
We need a roll call. We have two folks absent, Don and Mitch. Everyone else is here.
Perfect.
Good. So I want to thank you for this. So just the context of this report, is this what you provide to the council as an update of our progress of what we're doing?
This was for us today to continue our discussion, to give us some bullet points of kind of some direction of where we need to go.
Okay, cool. So I don't get used to this, but I read the minutes and I feel so prepared. And when I read this, I feel like, and we were just talking about whether we sort of, I'm just forgetful, so I forget some of what we talked about, but I was surprised because I thought, did we really talk about reducing single-use packaging, or was it replacing or reducing plastic single-use packaging? Because the to-go containers and stuff, I don't know that I have an idea that's going to say, let's not take out food in anything. I think I was talking about, at least, my whole presentation was talking about replacing that with more sustainable, compostable options.
Sure.
Okay, so I think that verbiage means a lot.
Yeah.
There.
So that should be
Plastic.
Yeah,
reduction in single-use plastic packaging.
Yes.
So we weren't going to focus on styrofoam or.
Well, styrofoam is a.
It is a plastic. It's styrene.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Polystyrene.
So all these things made out of petroleum.
Okay.
I didn't even know it.
Oh, we better approve them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, we probably should. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Any discussion?
I read them all too.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Sounds like we're boom.
Okay.
All right.
I spent a lot of time on those minutes.
Thank you. Yes. Yes,
So,
they came out very well.
I tried to put a bit more detail in for everybody just to
Thank
make sure
you.
it's most everything was in there. So
Yeah, that was obvious, and you really did put some. I mean, I think Mitch isn't here to talk to them about this, but I think almost we sort of overcorrected.
okay,
And,
well, just let me know. I can go less or more.
Dave paused and scratched his nose.
When
It looked pensive.
Yeah.
I felt to tell me that he would not be here today. He said the minutes were perfect.
So however you guys want, I can adjust it and make it. It takes more detail, more time. You know, it just takes more time to do it. That's all.
What I found about the minutes was that I went, oh yeah, I said that. You know, I had to actually, it's been a month. So we went through and I was like, oh yeah, I did say that. Oh yeah. It was a good reminder, I think. So I remembered what I had signed up to.
I try not to be too verbatim because we do have the recording.
Sure.
If ever need to figure out exactly what someone said, we do have recordings. We can go back and,
Yeah, that totally makes
and
sense.
listen to the exact wording.
And they're
as
being
well,
posted
so.
on the website. I haven't looked yet.
They should be, yeah.
Okay.
And that's funny. It's a
Once they're
sustainability committee, and I did print them, and I thought, I'm printing these minutes. But I also feel nervous sometimes when I'm reading them on my computer or I'm accessing them in the meeting, for fear that everyone thinks I'm checking email or something. But anyway, I will think about that before.
Yeah. You guys might be able to adopt something aside from bringing the minutes in and maybe have electronic. You know, to print the minutes out.
Yeah.
Pop it up there.
We have to have a hard
We
original
do,
signed
yeah.
copy
Okay.
for Oregon state law. So,
Okay. Okay.
Paper
so
use.
at least I will be printing one
Okay.
for
Well,
the
we can
chair
always
to
get
sign.
recycled paper for the office. That would be helpful.
So, and I want to throw this conversation open to everybody about these three issues that, because Anne-Marie was kind enough to distill down that entire meeting to these 3 points that we were going to take forward. So I wanted to be a little more clear on the first one, because when I first read all three, they seemed so broad as almost impossibly broad. I don't know how we would get something like that in traction and take something to the council and say, here's an actionable step. And then the reduction in groundwater toxicity came from your conversation about Roundup and other things.
Yep.
But isn't that surface water we were talking about? Because if we're talking about seepage, I mean, then we get into the leakage and the leachate, but we don't have landfills, so I don't know where that goes.
I know, to me, it was mostly my concern of like what we were talking about people buying pesticides, spraying them all over the place, and washing into the groundwater, getting into the lakes and the oceans, and the adverse effects to the wildlife and the plant life. And so it was more the direct human interface of that rather than, well, I'll back up a little bit. I have no idea, I don't have any study on how all the water is processed in this county. I actually haven't, in the 3 years that I've lived here, haven't said, so where are we doing all that? You know, when I lived in Mount Shasta, I knew where a lot of us had septics, but I knew where all the water was cleaned and where it was processed and sent back out.
Yeah.
I have never really seen how that happens here. So I was specifically talking about the toxicity due to pesticide and herbicide use.
Got it.
That was...
So how should we, so if it says reduction in groundwater toxicity, should we add to that due to pesticide use?
Yeah, pesticide, herbicide, or also non-biodegradable soaps. You know, the things that households have a direct ability to make a change that will shift what's happening. It doesn't have to be some big thing. It's something that individually, through education, suggestions from the city and the sustainability committee, that we can say, well, if you use this instead, this is the benefit, and it doesn't cost anything more. So to me, it's more those things. Just how can individual citizens make changes, understand more about what's growing, what they're killing, why are they killing it, whether or not they're using soaps that are biodegradable or not, how easy that is to flume. And there's so many of the soaps now are biodegradable. I don't even know what isn't in the stores anymore. But the herbicide and pesticide thing is big as far as I'm concerned. It really needs to be done.
So how would you like to reword number 2?
Reduction of groundwater toxicity.
So currently, the city, like we talked about this last time, the city doesn't actually use Roundup and stuff, right?
No, but
in parks,
private citizens, but the county does.
The county does.
Okay. So the stores are still selling it, and the county still uses it. So we could, Anne Marie, we could just say pesticide, herbicide, I don't know.
No, it's totally up to you guys.
Yeah, because I don't know how you
Dave's
really
right.
write this.
It's a pretty big
That's
one.
very broad.
It is.
Well, in surface water, there's also the surface water from those products that are coming out.
Right.
How do you, so are you, do we want to have a goal of like a workshop educational thing? I mean, I don't know how, with this single-use plastic packaging, I feel like that's going to be a big, that's going to be a task that's like, okay, beginning, middle, end, here's the goal. With the pesticides and herbicides, I am all for that. People, not using it. I just don't know how to, how that would be, what steps to get there.
Yeah, I think the biggest one that I can see that would probably be fairly easy to do is education, which is part of why I'm writing that booklet. Helping people understand that most of the things that they're killing using that stuff are actually very beneficial plants, that they just understand who they are, why they're there, and how to incorporate them into the yard. And also to be doing things like permaculture practices and companion planting that actually makes the plants that they don't want in their yard kind of go away. So it's education.
And we talked too about there was some signage we kicked around that people had used, like it said, hey, this lawn is pesticide free. We could move forward on trying to get signs like that available to anyone who wants to come in. Like, let's say, if you drive by the community center right now, the lawn is gorgeous. It's really, really beautiful. It's super rich and green because they're getting lots of moisture. What if a sign was in the middle of it that you could see from the road as you drove by to, go play basketball or whatever, that said, hey, this lush green lawn is pesticide free.
Nice.
find out how we do this at lincolncity.org/green or something, where we encourage we go with a 10-point plan to the city and say, look, just have your web guy, web people say these things about what they do. Here's what we use to treat weeds. Here's what we use to treat insects. And you can see the results. And then maybe we could do some sort of Earth Day fair down the road with some partner agency like Audubon. But we don't have to do something like that. We could it could be like you say, just public information. Some signage, and then on the website you could order your own flyer if you want to download a PDF and print it, and maybe we could provide through a local shop like Bob's or something where you could get, or Trillium, where you could get the waterproof paper that you can put through your printer, and you can put it on a stake and it'll stay there for months and even in the rain. It's really pretty cool stuff. And so that's something, and we could redefine it to something like, it's not nowhere near as short and pithy as yours, but public education on the dangers of pesticides and herbicides use along with other threats to the environment and our water supply.
Okay, so public education, say that again.
I mean, if this is totally first draft, on the dangers of pesticides and herbicides, along with, to incorporate what we're suggesting here about shampoos and such, other threats to the environment and our water supply. That way we're not saying, we're going to tackle our groundwater situation. And to answer your question, Lincoln City pulls water out of Schooner Creek. That's where all of our drinking water comes from. So it's surface water coming through the clear cuts, which is a big concern. The county doesn't care about spraying because all that's coming into our water. In other areas outlying town, most people are on wells or well systems. Out in Otis, there's probably 4,000 people, including mostly families with kids, that are drawing water out of the ground. And we did that for 12 years and never once filtered our water. It was awesome.
Nice.
And so anyway.
But yeah, if it's coming through the clear cuts, that is problematic. And the education thing, my nonprofit, Earthwise Institute, which is just getting going, but it's all about education about these kinds of things. So this is right up my alley, and the love of why I got on the committee in the first place is to help the bees, bring bees education. And I love that idea of doing the signs, like you can get your, I don't know if it's through the Audubon Society or who, that you can get your yard so that it says this is a bird-friendly, or it's natural habitat thingy on it. And I love that stuff. I think that's great, and it really is something that people can put that sign out there and go, I'm doing my part, and I'm going to let people know I'm doing my part. And then people can start going, oh, okay. It's just a suggestion.
Good message,
Yeah, it's just a quiet suggestion, and saying, you don't have to do that stuff. Look how great my yard is, and I'm not doing any of that. But again, doing helping people to understand the natives and non-natives, and the other thing, when I was writing this piece this morning, I was really thinking about, as the climate and the weather are shifting, so is the natural plant base is going to shift. So what we're looking at as nature is adjusting to the way the weather's changing is going to affect everything, how we're planting our yards, how we're supporting the parks, how we're saying, well, that was a weed. Well, maybe it's not anymore. Maybe it's part of the way nature is adjusting to the weather changes. So there's a lot of education, I think, that needs to occur for us to really get a handle on that.
Well, so going back to what you kind of redefined it, public education on dangers of pesticides and herbicides and other threats to the water supply, you included other threats to the environment and water supply, but I would almost suggest removing the environment, because then again we're getting way broad. So if we just keep it pesticides and herbicides and other threats to the water supply.
Okay. And we could even say public education on the alternatives to pesticides and herbicides, along with, instead of the dangers of.
That's good.
I think people get tired of
Yeah.
being lectured about dangers.
Alternatives, that's good.
People tell me bourbon is dangerous. Can you believe it?
One thing, I printed these out. This is a little excerpt from that book I was talking about, just kind of talking about motivations and stuff.
I listened to the audiobook of that back then.
You did?
It was really interesting.
Yeah. And there's that little blurb.
I see a couple of things, like after I joined the Mud Club, I was like, this sounds like it might be an idea from this book.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, so this is just 6 things he kind of mentions early on in the book. Like 6 kind of principles for things to kind of catch on. So he's talking about products, he's talking about, he makes a lot of analogies, talking about restaurants and items and whatever. But these 6 things are just kind of like, okay, social currency, triggers, emotions, public, practical value, and stories. So it's basically like, and in our case, it would be kind of like, okay, how do we get these messages catching on? And, how do people feel about them? How can you remind them, like driving around, seeing that sign on the lawn as a trigger to be like, oh yeah, I was going to look into that. And so kind of talking about like embedding little reminders and stuff. So anyways, this I just printed out. We don't have to talk about it right now, but I just thought it was it's kind of a fun thing, because you can apply it to anything really, but I think it's useful in applying it to this, because yeah, people get tired of being lectured. People go, yeah, and so it's like, okay, how do you break through that, and how do you kind of get around people's sometimes knee-jerk, like whatever, don't tell me what to do kind of a thing. So
yeah. So how do we make it fun instead of chore?
Fun, or kind of tug on different emotions, or get people to kind of feel like they have insider info by doing something new, like approaching something different, like, oh yeah, I just use Mint now, it's cheaper, on my weeds, or whatever, kind of let people brag about it, kind of thing. So anyway, this is just a little thing that I very hurriedly typed up this afternoon before we came down today, but I was thinking about it, and this is really quick, but this is kind of along the single-use plastic packaging thing. Last time I was kind of saying, well, maybe not a ban. After going to Jay's Fish and Chips yesterday, I'm kind of like, I've changed my mind on that. So I just wanted to quickly say that really quick, because I think a lot of times people won't do something unless they're kind of made to. They had styrofoam cups. They gave me a plastic straw, a plastic fork for fish and chips, which you're eating with your hands. All their to-go stuff was in styrofoam and plastic bags, and my husband was watching me just like melt down about it. I was like, and I was so biting my tongue, because it's like, okay, the fish and chips are fine. We haven't been there in like 2 years, but it was like, oh my God, I want to say something so badly, but it's like, no, it's not going to be received well right now, whatever. But it was killing me, and everybody that was coming in to get stuff to go was just like, plastic, styrofoam, and I was just thinking like, you know what? Maybe a ban is like the only way to do it. I don't know.
Okay, so let's do this. We've
narrowed
down number 1 and number 2.
I just want to say amen.
So yeah.
No.
And thank you for this.
Oh, yes.
Yes, thank you.
It's an easy listen. It's a good book to listen to. It's not a hard read or anything.
Yeah, the contagious book, yeah.
So I think let's make sure we're okay with the language in number 3.
I'm curious. I swear to God, I couldn't find the words food waste. I did a search on the PDF in the minutes, and I just don't recall where that came from. It's also one that scares me
I
about
wasn't sure
how we
exactly
tackle
what he meant.
Who,
So
Mitch?
yeah, or what the committee. So I was trying to extrapolate from that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, it was partly the composting, and partly I think I don't know if that, I was going to say the buying things in bulk, but I don't think that would be a food waste thing. I think it's mostly the composting.
So it's just as
So
basic as
encouraging
educating
composting.
people that because that's going to be North Lincoln Sanitary's charge as our vendor. When they start putting a brown container on our streets that says fill this with compostable foodstuffs and clippings and everything else, I would hope they're going to walk us through that.
Well, hopefully, and also there's a sustainability group down on the moorage down by Sledge River, and they've been experimenting with different things, and one of them is these buckets, which I'm going to absolutely murder the name. I keep wanting to call them Picasso buckets, but I know that's not right. But you can, it's like those white kind of couple of gallon, 5-gallon buckets, and you have one inside the other with this filter, and you put your kitchen waste in that with this, it's some kind of material that helps it naturally break down. And as it breaks down, it puts compost tea in the bottom of the bucket. So then you can take the top of the bucket out and put it in your garden.
Oh, wow.
And then you can mix up the compost tea and use it for growing stuff. And anybody can have one of these things in their house. They cost them nothing to make. So that is something that I could get more information on. We can let people know about them. And then we don't actually have to wait until this whole bigger thing happens with the city, because that's ultimately going to be great, especially for the cuttings from the yard and all that kind of stuff. But for kitchen waste, you can do something that simple. And you know, and you can sell the compost tea. I was even thinking about talking to the nurseries and things to see if they would like to have a supply of compost tea, because it's wonderful for growing fabulous stuff. And this is just a really simple process. Easy to set up.
So what are your thoughts then on rewording number 3?
Yeah, it sounds like the composting thing through North Lincoln is happening, right? Is that, I mean,
in a year.
Yeah, so in a year they're doing that.
Yeah.
So does anyone have any ideas then on
reduction
what they thought Mitch was trying to say with food waste? With the food?
He was talking, I think, a lot about locally grown food being more available to people and stuff.
Yeah, there was discussion about community gardens and who's running what and how that works. Because if this were misconstrued, all I'm concerned about is if we're hammering restaurants in a gentle possible way of saying, hey, would you like to play ball with compostable things? So you get listed on the website, you're part of the 75% that go green, and yay. And eventually enough to shame Jays and the last holdouts into finally doing it because they just can't take the flack on social media anymore. You know, that kind of thing. That's the only way to win that other than a ban. Because, side note, I went in there once and I was so mad about that, but I saw the sign that was anti-marine reserves, and I was like, what do I get angrier about? Yeah, they're not keen on that, and I was like, I have nothing to share with you people. So I just bailed. Anyway, I think that I would want to make sure we weren't taking that message of, hey, we're going to limit you, we need you to help us limit your food waste, restaurants, because now we're really starting to get into the business.
Yeah, so it was part of that too, and it was also in the grocery stores and stuff. The stuff that is, they can't keep on the shelves anymore. Where is it going? Some of it is going to Chance. I talked to Sharon. Some of it's going to the food bank. But I think that was also part of the conversation, is how much. I know in Mount Shasta, when I was down there, they had gotten, because somebody had gotten something out of one of the dumpsters and had eaten it and got food poisoning and sued the grocery store, so they started locking the dumpsters. So then people couldn't get all this lovely food that was still in there and feed it to the wildlife or feed it to the ranch animal, whatever. And it was just going to waste. So I think that was part of the conversation of how to make sure that anything that is past its sell date or something, that we can do something else with it and make sure it's not just going into the dump. So I think that was part of the food waste conversation.
Shall we wait on number 3 and just say
until Mitch is back?
The group is unsure on the
Because that's a big
goal of number 3.
A lot of that is
And
not
wait for
really
Mitch.
within, I think
Okay.
so. A lot of that is not really something, like if it's that broad, a city
Yeah.
So
itself can't.
I think the
needs to be
composting
redefined.
and other thing, and gardening is probably,
Needs to be redefined when Mitch is present.
yeah. But I will find out about those buckets and what the name actually is. I can even bring one and show it to you next time if you're interested. It's just so easy to use, so.
So just to recap, so I can put this in here. So the first two that you guys have decided on should read.
Reduction in single-use plastic
Single-use plastic
packaging.
And then two,
Public education on alternatives to pesticides and herbicides and other threats to water supply.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay,
Well done.
so we have that. So
Yay.
now we can go back to number one
Yeah.
and start identifying everything. Start putting together a plan.
Yeah. So when I was, freaking out at Jay's fish and chips yesterday, I was kind of thinking that we were kind of talking about restaurants and hotels, but I almost wonder if we should start with restaurants and coffee places, like anything that's edible. That's kind of where the biggest, single-use thing happens. And maybe wait on the hotel thing. I don't know, maybe not. But I was just thinking that we could even kind of give an incentive and then basically say, hey, if, we won't have to do a ban if we can get this percentage of people on board or something like that. And then kind of make it like, you can be one of the first ones, exclusive, whatever, for us to brag about in this pilot program or something like that. I was just trying to think of what is the motivation for Jay's Fish and Chips to be doing this right now, and it was they don't want to wash dishes and they want to keep things super duper cheap. And so it's all I was sitting there just going it boils down to money is the only thing, and that they don't care. And I was sitting there just going and Andy's if someone doesn't care, they don't care. And it's horrible, and he's but this, they don't, it's clear that they don't care. And a place like that would probably be pretty pissed off, about a ban and make it, be loud about it and all of that. And I guess I feel like it would be great if any public, talk about it among just people in town was started off on a positive note first. So even though I think a ban could still be the only way it really takes hold, for all of them. Maybe start with kind of a little carrot that so people can be oh yeah, did you hear the city's not giving away free money, whatever, but in a business sense, kind of yeah, they'll absorb some of the cost of switching over, and that's really great. Start off with a happy, and an opportunity kind of thing. But that's just kind of, it's not a plan or anything. It's just kind of.
I think it is, because I think there's a cart horse issue here. I think that if the city wants us to go out and research and find out, with the restaurants, first off, anecdotally, we could probably guess what 75% of those responses would be and what their concerns are going to be. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to boil down to cost. My cost concerns overwhelm my concerns about the environment. Oh, and also I don't have any concerns about the environment. I mean, that's going to be a small subset, unfortunately. But I think that for us to have that conversation with people, because you said it, she said incentives. And right now we have no incentives to put on the table. So first, we have to find out if we presented something similar, whatever the group wanted to say, something similar to that presentation last month, to the council and say, here's the deal. We will be your foot soldiers and go and try to make this program get off the ground if you give us 90 days to get 75% of this target list of restaurants, which is essentially the 85 restaurants in town. Say we want 75% of those people. We can do it with X amount of support from your city newsletters and your blast. They have certain tools where they reach out to restaurants and hotels and such. We can take hotels off the list. But to say, we need to know that you'd be in to help us with, I don't know what that incentive is. I still think it could be some fashion of we will reimburse you for making the switch to a more expensive option. Because otherwise you're never going to get chicks.
Yeah.
You're never going to win the day because you should subscribe to Mother Jones. I'm not going to do that.
That you're all, everything you said is spot on. I'm just thinking of reduction in single-use plastic packaging. If
Maybe and utensils, I guess.
if we've, do we want to add reduction in single-use plastic packaging in eating and drinking establishments? Because it sounds like, because if we keep it at reduction in single-use plastic packaging, well, you identify the stakeholders, there's a lot. There's a lot more than eating and drinking establishments. There's hotels, there's the convenience stores, there's all of the grocery stores. Every single one of those has single-use plastic packaging. McKay's has a deli. Safeway has a deli.
Yeah.
So those are all stakeholders. And if we leave it broad at reduction in single-use plastic packaging, and then we only focus on eating and drinking establishments, I'm afraid that they are going to
Feel picked on.
they will feel picked on, yes,
Yeah.
and come up in arms. So I think that we probably do need to include all the rest.
Yeah.
That's why we identify the stakeholders. We need to identify all of those.
Yeah, and I'm happy to work with the grocery stores and things, because that's an area that I don't eat out that much, but I buy bulk, and I talk, I'm happy to go in and work with them about alternatives to even offer the public. But I know that Trader Joe's, and I want to talk to Trader Joe's more about it, they are eliminating all single-use packaging in their stores nationwide this year. So my question to them is, how are they doing that? And are they having the manufacturers change all their packaging? I mean, they must be. So, it's that kind of thing.
Single-use plastic packaging would also include, a thing like a cell phone charger comes in. That's a single-use plastic packaging, technically.
Yeah.
And so that's why we need to define it even more.
Yeah.
I think most of the litter you see, especially, and I think the most gross overuse of single-use plastic is with eating and drinking.
Carry out.
Okay.
food,
Yeah.
items.
Coffee.
Yeah.
And that would include convenience stores, I guess. But it's going to be harder because they have corporate, it's harder.
Because some of the convenience stores, and I have not been into all of them, but here in Lincoln City, but it seems like the Shell, no, maybe I'm wrong. Do any of the convenience stores here have the food things, like corn dogs or
The AM,
whatever?
AM, PM.
A lot of places here have that little things.
Because I would think that we would want to include that too. So eating and drinking establishments, including delis and takeout food at convenience stores.
And as far as I understand what you're saying about the litter part, but what's being bought in the grocery stores may not be ending up on the streets, but it's still ending up in the dumps.
Yeah.
So that's why that, to me, is part of the important education switch, as far as just, because it's incredibly easy for the most part, too. Almost every store now has huge bulk sections that you can buy so much of your stuff.
But people like the people at large, or people in general, pig. It's like people in general are, it's way harder to change. I mean, to change people's minds about core stuff. I mean, I get my Dutch Bros every day, 2 minutes from work. It's like you're not going to be able to change people's habits, and that's not what a city can do. But I think what you can change is what its vessel, what its vessel is made of.
Exactly. And the mayor has, at one point in the conversation that I addressed in some memo last month, said something in their work study about waste. They said, well, it's all about educating, how are we going to educate our residents? And at the end of the day, we're, as residents, we're like a small piece of the problem in May, June, July, August, September, October, November, because it's the tens of thousands of visitors who dwarf us in number, who are hungry, who are going through our restaurants at a higher clip than we are, and who are, if they throw something out of the window or drop it on the street, they're less likely to be recognized. I mean, it is not that they are the only problem. By far, that's not true. But we address both big populations with one. And I think the more we get into, and frankly, I love the buying bulk in grocery stores and stuff, but I doubt that too many of our visitors are here buying bulk grains at Trillium for their weekend on the beach. I think that they're going to be buying meals. And as discouraging as that is, and so that's right, if we can just say, look, we're not going to change those habits, but we can change the vessel.
Well, okay. I feel completely outnumbered, and that you're saying that what I'm talking about doesn't count because it's not the guests who are the most population. And I'm sorry, but I completely disagree with you. I think it's just as important. And education is part of what's going on. People's minds are being changed because they have to. We are in such trouble on this planet right now. If people don't change, we're not going to survive. It's just that simple. This is not little piddly stuff. So I'm sorry, Sarah, but I disagree with you.
That's fine. Oh, no. And I fully am in line with what your habits are. I do a lot of the same things. And that's why it was like, all right, let's just go get something fast at Jay's. And that's why I'm so horrified when I see the rest of the population that doesn't behave like I wish that they would.
More and more people are every day, though. I get the newsletters from Live Kindly and a lot of these sustainability groups, and people are shifting in rapid order right now because they know they have to. So I'm just changing the tone and saying, let's give people the benefit of the doubt that they are willing to change because, the game's up down here. We have to get on this. We're in trouble, and the planet is in trouble. I don't see that we can continue to take baby steps. That's my opinion. Anyways, but you're right about the takeout food. Most of the trash on the street is certainly from coffee shops and all that kind of stuff. I totally agree with you about that.
Yeah, it's gross.
I walked out of the pool this morning. It was like 5:45, and I was the only one standing outside the community room, and I could hear it. This plastic bag came blowing across like a tumbleweed, like right across the parking lot, and just right at my feet. And picked it up. I was hoping I was on camera. Cindy, this is your problem.
A good commercial. And tumbleweed is being rolled down.
That would be a good commercial.
Yeah, so it's definitely an issue, and it's frustrating, and depressing. And,
that's why it's and traveling, and I don't get to travel very often now, but when we do, it's like, in the Northwest, we're in a great area where there's a lot more education, more like-minded people and all that, but then traveling, in an airport and all that, everywhere you look, it's just like, it's like, it's a nightmare. But it's like, what can you do? It's like, there are so many people who really don't care, like, who actively don't, and so that's why I kind of go to these kind of tips. It's like, you're not going to win people over with the same, this person might be won over by this strategy, this person might be totally, not absorbing any of that. So it's like, I think it's important for us to think about all the different ways. And with approaching businesses, I think it is mostly cost, and, showing them that the city cares enough to help them out. So I think crafting a plan kind of based on that, the incentive thing would help. And going out and maybe kind of polling, like, hey, the city is going to be maybe doing this with, like not giving detailed plans out to other businesses yet, but just say kind of like, would you be on board with being in this program where, the city would pay for some of your, these are things you're already paying for. Would you be willing to let the city help you out with those costs if you changed what you used?
So back to stakeholders, are we wanting to focus then on the eating and drinking establishments the delis or the grocery stores and the takeout at convenience stores. Do you also want to add, is there anything else you want to add to that?
Coffee, fast food.
That would be
restaurants,
eating and drinking
yeah,
establishments.
delis. The grocery stores would be great if we could.
Grocery stores overall, rather than just
Well,
the deli?
And part of
The only place you can, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, the only thing, one of the easier steps with the grocery stores is just to encourage them to get things like the mesh bags in there and stuff, so people aren't using the single-use produce, the plastic bags and the produce bags, getting those things and having them for sale and hanging by the produce section. That's what the natural food stores do, and then people, so that's a small step. I think manufacturers changing their packaging is just going to happen as a kind of a sidekick. But in the grocery stores themselves, getting alternatives to the plastic bags.
Okay, so include grocery stores as a stakeholder.
Yeah, anyone who has that kind of, there's a terminology that's in a lot of city ordinances that I've seen. It's something like carry-out prepared foods, carry-out prepared and to-go foods. It's something that's specific enough that says, yeah, it's not going in and buying 4 boxes of Life cereal. That's not what we're talking about in the grocery store. We're talking about you've got a prepared meal that is ready to roll and you're walking out with it. And that is a definable characteristic in the trait. And so it's those items that we'd be targeting. And if we could then maybe even turn to the city, because they've got licenses for everyone who's doing business in Lincoln City, and they're probably sorted by food service, we could say, I need a list of the 83 restaurants and the grocery stores in town, and then say, this is our target list. We come up with some sort of survey instrument and say, do you have contact information? Can we send them a postcard? Can we offer a $50 card to Trillium or something for someone who responds? Just have a drawing. I don't know, some way to incentivize participation to quickly get them in within a month. And then say something like what you said, would you be willing to do this if the city were to offset some of your costs for a limited time? But we can't say that. Again, cart horse issue. If the city's not willing to play ball, otherwise we're just making promises on behalf of the city. We're going to all be run out of town on rails.
So that's why
That's good probably for you to know.
So here's what we need to do. So once we have the third thing nailed down, and we're working on right now, is we identify the stakeholders for each of those. And then we identify the method, how we want to communicate, how we're proposing to communicate those. So, and you've suggested surveys. So that would be a method. What we do, and then we propose ideas for each of these things, and then we have to put it all on paper and say to City Council, this is what we're thinking. We're thinking for number one, these are the stakeholders that we have identified. We think that a good method for communicating with them right out of the gate is a survey. We think for types of public outreach on this and schedules for the outreach, we haven't discussed that yet. We think for incentives, this is our idea for incentives. And then on down this list, and so each of these things, this is what we have to suggest and write up and present to council.
So if I may, on the number 2, to me, the big thing in number 2 is the education and the creating of, like what we've been talking about too. Having things written up and put on the website, but also to offer classes in gardening, I'm just trying to think of what the plants are that are growing in the gardens that people generally spray, which then affects the water. And that is teaching them what those are, what alternatives are, and how to use them, and how to go, okay, if I don't want this, what do I? And it's just, to me, it's a purely educational thing. And that's something I'm willing to participate in because I'm very knowledgeable about this. And so I can step up and say, sure, I can teach classes on them. And I'm happy to do that and write up different pieces. So the main thing for number 2, as opposed to number 1, number 2 really is pretty much purely an educational thing, but I love the sign thing that Dave was talking about, saying if you're going to go pesticide-free, you get one of those signs and get to be on that. I mean, those are the 2 main things for number 2 as far as I can see. I don't think it needs to be any more complicated than
Okay,
that.
so number 2 is, say again?
Education.
Well,
Through-
that is
Okay.
the goal, it's public education.
Yeah, so through
What are
the
the
creation of, I want to say booklets, I don't know what you want to call them, but of the native and naturalized plant life that grows in our gardens, so that we have the ability to make choices on whether or not you even need to be killing the plants. I don't know how to word that
Okay,
exactly.
so I
No.
think I get what you're, so booklets, brochures, pamphlets, something on
and
native
to be
plant
offered.
life.
Native and naturalized plant life, what can grow, what are the companion plants, how do you know, basically what you grow to keep what you consider weeds out of the yard.
Okay.
And so to do it in a more proactive way, it's kind of like with the Scotch broom.
To keep weeds out and thus not need pesticides.
Right, and also to understand what some of these plants that we're calling weeds are actually edible and medicinal herbs that you might actually be delighted to have in your garden if you knew what they were.
Okay,
And so that's the education.
so that's one. So
Yeah.
what's...
And then the other one is to offer classes through the library or whatever, where or have consultants come out to the gardens. And again, these are things that I can piggyback through my nonprofit with the city. We actually go to people's gardens and say, this is what these things are that are growing in your yard, and this is a pamphlet on what you can do with them. And if you really don't want them, then these are the things you want to plant instead to replace them.
Okay,
So-
so classes would be
Classes and
through the library,
and then I can
meaning,
consult.
through the library, meaning they're held in the library?
We can hold them in the library, I know, because the library lets us do that, or I can hold them at the community center, the cultural center, it can be, and, you know, I can do PowerPoint presentations to really explain, but also to do on-site consultations for people if they
And
want.
so the classes would be taught by you?
Me
And-
and my nonprofit, if the city's okay with that, to piggyback with my nonprofit. which
Well,
is-
and
yeah.
again, so these are the ideas that the committee wants to present to council, and
Right.
the council says, yeah, that sounds great.
Right, right, and I
So,
can write
classes-
something more clear about this, like little, this is what the classes would be, and that kind of stuff. I could write that up for the next meeting,
Okay.
and I'm happy to do that.
That would probably be good, and provide a list of the nonprofit consultants that you're thinking of. So those are the 2, that's it for number 2 on public
As
education?
far, I mean, unless Dave and Sarah have something else that they want to
I
add.
think to cover it.
And then the signs.
What about the
And
signs?
And then the
Okay.
signs, so that's number 3, because I thought that was brilliant.
Okay, so the
You know, that
signs
falls
on
in that, that's an
lawns.
incentive. Definitely.
Well, yeah,
And
and the
how
campaign
would
could
we-
kind of be like, hey, keep our city, you know, free of, or whatever, kind of like a little campaign thing. That's
Right,
kind of
what
like
they
a
say
little
about the-
little
With
phrase
the
or
campaign,
something that's like,
we'll just, signs on lawns with campaign slogan, which
Yeah.
we haven't.
Yeah, or saying, look at how great this is, and this is pesticide-free, like the community center crafts, which is the example they...
Well, I sure hope it's pesticide-free.
I will go find out. They
It's sure pretty much, and weed-free.
I would talk with Jeannie,
Yeah.
I would talk with Joe and
I
Dave.
can talk to
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're the
I'll
ones
talk
that
to
do the,
Yeah.
I'll call.
To bring up Dutch Bros again, they seem to do a really good job with marketing and like having things where people put the stickers on their car, Dutch Mom, Dutch, you know, Dutch Nation, whatever, you know, they do a really good job, I think, of like sort of creating a following and like a community based around supporting their product. So you could do something beyond this, just
They're a
lawn
case study
signs,
in
but
brand community.
to what?
They're a case study in brand community. they do it super well.
And there's no real value to their community either. It's just expensive coffee. You know, if they can do it for that,
Precisely.
Yeah.
it's just fun vibes and expensive, highly caffeinated coffee products. Like their products don't stand for anything in themselves that are valuable.
Yeah, but it's
Which is
a cool club.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and you see it everywhere, the triggers thing. It's like, oh, I found that car, and then I drove by another one. And,
So it could be more wide angle, maybe stickers, maybe other ways to support than just this lawn is pesticide free, but
Stickers.
Yeah.
some other call to action,
Yeah.
community building sort of signifier.
Yeah,
I
bumper
like
stickers
that.
are awesome, I love those things.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we have 3 things for that, and so if everyone wants to think about more specifics on those, probably mostly you, Catherine, more specifics on those things, the signs, the stickers, what we're thinking on who's going to make those, those types of
Like he
things.
knew who would make them. You said that waterproof plastic stuff. Where did you say?
Oh, that was just the waterproof paper that used to be available at Hall's Office Supply in town. I'm sure someone sells it.
Okay.
But it's readily available online, but it would just be fun to have someone local have it.
Yeah,
But that way you could go print out a sign that said, I'm certified, and all they used to be was just a ladybug. But, I was reading today that 70% of all insect populations are, starkly threatened, and they're saying that in 100 years we might be insectless, which would be devastating for any measure and probably the end of it all.
Yeah.
But that's the message. I mean, maybe a ladybug, something, come up with some way to say, pesticides,
Kill you. Hello,
Yeah.
dead. No.
It's so morbid.
Thank you, Sarah. That was great, Sarah. I like that. She's a person.
No, I do think, I mean, right now we're in the process of looking for a new vendor for some stickers we want just for water bottles and stuff at the college for the same reasons.
Yeah.
And because I want a little room on my daughter's laptop where I can put an OCC sticker next to her black squid sticker. And I think that there's room for Lincoln City to have some sort of sustainable, I mean, these are plastic stickers, but yet they carry a message and they're not single use, they last a long time. And I think there's something to it. And there's even, I mean, there's all variety of ways we could spread the word. Like, the city has control of messaging. This is a little out there, but they have, we have 4 minutes. The city has control of messaging of this ODOT reader board that we, it turns on and says, expect heavy congestion in the summer. Like, oh, thanks for bleeding, the bleeding obvious statement. So what if it said, welcome to Lincoln City, a pesticide-free community? Because then I'm coming into my VRD. You're never going to educate me that Roundup is evil necessarily in one sign, but I might be like, at least, what?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Are we not allowed to spray at home? I don't know, we should talk about it. And then maybe when you get to ACE, maybe Ty would let us have next to the Roundup here's a sprayer for your vinegar. We got a good deal on vinegar. And I didn't know you could use that for that. Who knows where that goes?
Yeah,
But it's possible.
Yeah, just to see where those things. Because when I talked to them at ACE about the Roundup before, they said, we don't like the stuff corporate makes us do it. So it's, and then you're like, oh, okay. So then you know that it has to go up to a state level. Some of those things have to go to a state ban before the corporate people are going to get on the stick about that. But we can certainly put the vinegar and the healthy alternatives next to
Right next to the...
next to it and say, pick this instead. So I think, and I can check with Quality Print to see if they can get that waterproof paper stuff and to do the signs locally.
It'd be cool if the paper was made of that, like, wildflower seed paper.
Oh, yeah.
Or if it's on grass, like grass seed is in it. Like, when this breaks down, just add your grass.
Yeah.
There's an article in the Week magazine this week that has a gift idea for Christmas. It's organic, it's just specially flavored lollipops. But if you plant the lollipop stick it grows plants.
Oh,
So it's got
nice.
seeds embedded in it.
Nice.
No
And the
kidding.
plants are related to the flavor.
Oh, that's cool.
Really
That's
pretty
that's
cool.
nice.
This is
Yeah,
so
like-
cool.
Yeah.
Feel free to find that link and email it to him.
Yeah.
It's a pop card, it has brilliant.
Like a lot of.
Yeah, and they
Yeah.
have little seeds.
Oh.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah.
And last thing, I just remembered, I did get, but I forgot to bring, the link to the company that you can get home kits for growing mushrooms from. So I'm gonna, because if we really encourage locals to grow mushrooms in the yard, number one, they won't be harvesting them all from the wild, and they are so good for your garden and for your culinary skills. So I will get that because
Cool.
it is a Northwest company that sells these kits. And it was, I had talked to Jeannie at one point about in Agnes Creek and these other things where they've had to pull all the underbrush out to actually get mushroom spores and spray them into the forest to get the breakdown happening more. I did not follow up with her about that, but when we're working with mushrooms, they are being proven to be one of the saviors on the planet right now, and the mushroom folk are quite powerful.
Argue, I'd just go hiking in the morning, just throw those spores out.
I know.
Yeah.
She's never going to know.
Well, that's true. Good point. That's called guerrilla gardening. We used to do that. I don't test that. Make
Okay.
seed balls and pitch them in the
Exactly what people did on the grassy slope near your place. When they planted that, people were going by at night and throwing seed balls.
Exactly. That's called guerrilla gardening. That's what actually has a term. Anyways.
So,
Yeah.
just wrap up. So Catherine she's going to come back with more thoughts on the 3 things for number 2. And then let's go back to number 1 on I think we identified the stakeholders.
Yeah.
So,
I'll find some terminology that defines that.
yeah,
The takeout.
that would be great.
To-go container.
And
Prepared
then,
food.
and then you two, you especially, think of is there any other form of communication that you want to use besides a survey? So think of how to reach out to the stakeholders and get their feedback. And I know they're all going to say cost, but they may, if you have open houses or talk with them one-on-one or do the surveys, they may, it gets their mind to thinking. So think about some other ways that we can include in our plan for communicating with the stakeholders, and then formulate more of how we want to do what we want to include in the plan for incentives. How we want to do it, because you're right. Without an incentive, they aren't going to do anything. So.
Yeah, extinction apparently is not a big enough incentive.
No.
So.
Something that we can put down on paper.
Yeah.
Weston can put it in minutes.
Kidding.
And then we can say to council to say, okay, this is our idea these are our ideas to present for incentives. Council, now give us the approval so we can go forth and.
Crossword, right?
Yeah.
Well, and will it be on us to kind of try to figure out the cost of, the city will probably have to figure it out themselves.
Well,
Right,
if the city if part of the incentive is the city paying for something, yes.
Yeah.
We are going to need to come up with, So that's why I'm saying the incentive is an important piece here, and I'm not sure exactly where you guys want to go with that. So think of that, and that will be probably a discussion that'll take a few meetings at least.
Well, we'll need to, in that survey, then ask businesses how much volume,
Exactly.
and what item.
Yeah. And those are all things, as a survey, we're going to want to come up with the questions.
Yeah.
So think of what kinds of things we want to put in the survey.
Yeah.
One interesting thing with the cost, I don't know if this would be possible, but what comes to mind is how they have things like the IGA for the international grocers, so they can buy into this group that gives you access to the quantities of products that are shared across multiple venues. So if you have one store buying 5 cases of takeout containers, they're not really going to get that good of a price. Whereas if you bought all the takeout containers for the entire city in one shipment, you're going to be able to maybe get that down to a price that could rival the original packaging.
Yeah.
So maybe there could be some system to allow the bulking purchasing.
It's kind of like looking for the best deal that the people who are playing ball are already getting. Like if you go to Old Line and you're addicted to their fried chicken sandwich and you take it home, it comes with the Portland ketchup is in this organic, I mean, it's a little paper cup with a paper lid inside a paper tray with the sandwich, and the grease doesn't get on your car seat. It manages to do all that stuff without styrofoam, and it works like a champ. So 2 concerns. Number 1, I don't want to give a cash incentive to Jay's Fish and Chips just to catch up with someone who's already doing it. Danelle and Ethan. So we have to find a way that's fair to the people who are already playing. And maybe that is enhanced advertising delivered by the city in X way for Y months. I don't know. But something that says, you're a prime mover here, you were first, and you deserve to be rewarded. But you are coming aboard, and way to go, and we're going to make this affordable for you because you're driven by price, and who isn't. And so, but we need to find out, like, who is the vendor that Old Line uses, and let's just say, well, what would it take? Call them up and say, what if I signed up 50 new restaurants so that when you came for delivery, you drop shipped. Instead, you were delivering to 40 other businesses. Like, price per piece for Danelle and Ethan would drop like a rock. So they benefit there, but it's not enough in my book. But anyway, yes, we'll talk about that.
So those are,
And,
do you guys see where I'm going?
yeah.
Yeah,
What I want to do is...
I'm not, I don't want to, I don't want to derail you on anything, because all these, but we have to somehow be able to capture them and put them on paper
Yeah.
so that we can have a specific plan to present to council.
And have action.
Bite-sized
items that are-
kind.
Right,
Yeah.
and have action items.
Go
and say,
forward.
Right.
But I still submit there's going to be a stickiness that's going to either make our survey ineffectual or it's going to make the next step tougher without the city hearing from us early on in this process. I don't think we can put together a final, here you go, here's our proposal, and here's the 48 businesses that are on board, because they're going to say, I'm on board depending on what the city brings to the table. The city's not going to bring to the table anything until the city council looks to Ed Drystad and says, yeah, we're in on this. What can you give us of TRT money for this? How are you going to advertise it? What are you going to give these people on your website? He's going to have to go back to his team. They're going to have to talk to finance. And a lot of these things we simply can't act on. What I fear worse is that we're going to have 6 meetings and everyone's going to quit because we're getting 0 progress, because they're asking us to do things we can't do independent of city council. We're going to have to make minor visits to city council and say, hey, I got a check-in report. You're going to have to tell me whether we can move forward.
Yeah,
So
we
here's
have
my
one next
suggestion.
month.
Let's have one more meeting, and we can finalize some of these incentives, et cetera, a little more of an idea that we can put down on paper,
Okay.
and get more specifics on your items. And then I'll put us on the agenda for, so that would be, because we're meeting the 4th Tuesday in January, so I'll get us on the agenda for the first city council meeting in February.
Okay.
And we can give them all of this.
Okay.
Say, this is where we're going, but
With that, is it too scary to have kind of like variables or whatever, and then go, like, city council is, like, public is there and all that. Anyone can watch it. Is it, are we going to outline something very vaguely first, or like, I mean,
all up to you guys.
Okay.
Well, and
You
is
can
there,
be as specific or as vague as you want.
In your experience, do ideas that are kind of just like still in planning mode, do they do well if they're brought up,
in a public meeting like that
Yeah.
versus, that's, I guess, what I would wonder is, can we just have a meeting with city council before we go public with it?
Maybe a work session instead
A
of one on
work
the
session,
agenda?
kind of a meeting where we're going over stuff and really being able to she wants stuff together rather than going up in front of everybody. Well, we're still not really.
I just don't really know how that stuff works.
I can ask. I can ask if we can get a work session.
Yeah, I think that might be better.
It might, and I think I hear both your concerns. I think, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, if people freaked out in the audience, or let's say there was a huge audience there because they were also considering burning down a school or something, and so and then they heard us and they're like, "What? This is crazy!" And there's always that off chance. But I believe that there's a chance that more than half the council could look at each other and say, "This is one of the coolest, exactly what we need to be doing. Ron, how fast can we move on this?"
I agree.
And they might just say,
I agree with
"Let's
you.
just speed this thing up. What resources do you need?" And that this is a pipe dream.
They're very
If
supportive
not
of the
this
sustainability
council.
committee, so.
Right. If not this council, every couple of years you roll the dice in this town. It's like,
And they brought it up.
Do I wanna move?
They brought it up.
This council is very pro-sustainability.
Yeah.
So,
but that is a
All right, well,
temporary
if we
irritating
think
thing.
that
Okay.
that a public meeting is fine, then
That's right.
great.
yeah.
I didn't know.
So I'll get us on the first council meeting in February, and then our next meeting in January will really solidify the things that we have, what we're thinking of for incentives, what we want to ask from the city.
Okay.
Do we want TRT money? Do we want
And we could actually
do we
define some
want
things like
money from marketing? Do we want, what do we want?
We could even define, we could say, okay, there are 92 businesses that fit our category, hypothetically. And we think that if the city says, we set a goal for the Sustainability Committee driving point with the city backing us up to reach 75% of these people to commit to using sustainable products, blah, blah, blah. Here's what that means financially, and here's what that means we can do in terms of marketing the city as a green destination and all the benefits that come from that, because that's one thing that's in it for Jay's Fish and Chips, is he's no longer going to be infuriating, people will be coming to town because, wow, Lincoln City cares about the things I care about. And we talked about that last month. But I believe there's value in that. I believe it's sussed out in what you provided today. And I think that that's what breeds brand community. Somehow people think that Dutch Brothers is, people like me. They're hip and fun just like I am. And I think this is the same kind of thing.
Yeah, and the green community, what they're talking about, applies to both 1 and 2 on the list.
Yes.
Absolutely. So that really does. So I'm thinking, I know I interrupted Jay when I know we need to get out here, but that maybe we doing a survey for number 2 as well of the residents and the businesses who may still be using herbicides and pesticides, and say, if somebody came in and showed you how to do this differently, would you come on board with this thing? If you were shown that there are other ways to do it that are actually way better, and that you can end up growing all kinds of stuff in your yard and using it in your household that you didn't know of, would you come on board with that? So I would say doing this sort of thing.
Okay.
I should notice, but we must email our water billings. Do we email?
We send it by paper.
Paper?
Yeah, they're done through a third party out of Bend.
But could Catherine write a note and include it and say, hey, click on this link or hit this
We can
QR
put things
code to
on
go
it,
to our
but
server?
I
It's
need
not-
to check with Debbie,
Sharon.
because there is a protocol for that.
It's not the easiest thing, like, it costs
Sure.
extra money, and
Yeah,
it's like
it
a
does
process
cost money.
to get extra material in there, so it's not like the easiest thing for them to do, but I think it is doable, from what I know. But
So I think
you have to ask Sherry, though, because she's the
that
one who
is-
does that in finance.
well, and I think that that's one of the items that we just add to our plan, that we say, council, we want to include something in the water bill.
What a perfect place to say,
Yeah.
thinking of watering your lawn, what else, what are you doing? in your
That's
lawn? Speaking of
lovely.
lawn care,
Yeah,
you might
'cause
you might water less if you weren't using so many chemicals.
They're doing a
Yeah,
lot
and
of
if you're using more natives that drink less, so there we are.
So I'll just write that as E.
They've been doing a lot of water
ABC,
conservation too,
Food
at
and
the
water
finance
bill.
department, where they've been, they hand out the timers and the things you can put in your toilet to have less flushing. they do work with people a lot, faucet adapters and stuff. They have all that gear for people who need it. I know for a while they were handing it out to every water customer. So it's something they have addressed, water conservation, which helps the city because you have to clean all the water. I mean, people are watering their lawns with chlorinated water that's been treated at the plant. So it all kind of comes from our system that we have to produce X gallons a day. So reducing the water also, I think, saves the city money on water. You know, your production costs.
Yep. I know a lot of that from living in Southern California, where we were on a regular basis rationing water and learning how to put zero-fight gardens in, you know. So it's really quite fun, this stuff you can grow.
Okay.
They're pretty. And so what's
Do
the
we
next
think we
meeting?
understand?
I think we understand.
Okay.
I think we understand. And when are we meeting again? Do we have a date?
It's the fourth Tuesday.
Yeah, we booked this room now for the fourth Tuesday of every month.
Every month.
We booked it through July or something like that. If we could.
We'll throw in a towel by then. Don't worry.
Yeah.
You'll crush our spirits.
It's not hard. It's not hard to look for.
Reach out to youth and out where they get their
Exactly
stuff.
what I was going to do.
Yeah.
No,
I
please,
just-
whoever
I want it
gets
to
there first.
work, and so, but in order for it to work, we have to be able to have concrete things that we can say, this is what we want to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
give us the authority to do it. And
Yeah.
and I don't want them to come back and say, well, yeah, that's all great, but how are you thinking you're going to do that? Well,
Yeah.
this is how.
Well, and part of it too with the piece I'm talking about is, can we as a committee, like if in number 2, if I do a PowerPoint presentation, can we have that linked to the sustainability committee or something on the website so people can go and, I mean, is that, because I'm very techie, so I'm thinking, make it digital so people can watch it, you can post it on things as well as doing the water bill thing. Is that something that we can do?
And that's another idea that we say, so I'll make that F.
Yeah.
One thing I would say,
Link to
doing
website.
surveys, I think it's always good to figure out as much other information as you can, like how many people are already doing it. You know, if people are already doing it, maybe it's just actually a cost reduction. If we can get a group purchasing
Yeah.
together, maybe 50% of the restaurants already do have compostable takeout containers.
Yeah.
You know, what
Or
actually
like
is
extra
the
cred,
amount?
like they
Yeah.
get more of a focus on like advertising or
Yeah,
whatever.
find
If
out
they're
what
already
you're
doing
right.
it.
Yeah, what's
But
actually
that's
happening? How many
Yeah,
people
so
are
that's
actually...
part of the survey.
How many people actually are using pesticides in their lawns?
Yeah.
Because I would assume that a lot of people are, but with the kind of people who live here, you know, what is actually the state of that problem? Is everybody using Roundup in their yards? Or are they really only stocking it for 10%?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what in a place like this, it'd be interesting to know that.
Yeah, and even going to the hardware store and say, how much of this stuff do you sell every year? I mean, can you give me by cases? Is that okay for me to ask that? You
There's
know,
probably
that's
also a lot of
Yeah.
landscaping companies that do it too, that,
Hopefully not.
with all the vacation rentals and stuff, there's a lot of, you know, in my neighborhood, I see them taking care of people, you know, yards that no one lives at, but they're still spraying. Actually, there's Meredith Lodging or whatever right next to my house sprays like once a month, and I see it, and I have to make sure my pets don't like walk all over it and stuff right after, and it kills me because it's like right there out my window. And so a lot of times it's like the companies, and they don't want to do anything that's harder, you know.
Well, I don't know what the limits are here. Like, I used to do landscaping
Which is
in
so
Canada.
nice.
I had a landscaping business, and we weren't allowed to apply any products that weren't natural.
Oh, really?
And you would,
Yeah,
yes,
well,
we had
that's
backpacks, and we're
cool.
spraying like everybody else, but the products weren't the same.
Oh, that's good.
So,
In Canada, you smothered them with maple syrup, right?
basically.
From the root.
But you would have seen us, and it would have looked like we were doing
Yeah, yeah.
just like anybody else,
Yeah.
except for like, you know, our marketing or whatever. But
It took my
Somebody asking
part of
for
Or they do it,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
When you see them spraying, you go up and go, hey, I'm curious.
What I will do, you guys, is I'll do my best to try and capture, just like what I did here.
Okay.
And then you can say, no, that's not what we meant at
Yeah,
all.
that was really
But
good.
I'll get it down, the points, so that then we can, or you guys can say, you can add, you can delete, and then we have so we have a structure
Yeah.
to work with next time, and then we have something to take to council.
Fair enough.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks to everybody.
Adjourn 4:20.
Yeah.
I know.
Gavel, gavel.
Gavel, 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 gavel. Ching.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Dashing over to the movie theater to watch that wonderful movie,
Ooh.
Harriet,
Oh, cool.
on the Underground Railroad.
Oh, nice.
It'd be quite good. Run, 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 dash, dash, dash.
Yeah, oh, it's something.
Is there a phone I could borrow really quick to call somebody?
I think you can use this phone here.
Oh, is there one? It's just